Lunchtime on CamGlen Radio with Cat Gibson.
Yes, you are listening to Cat Gibson here in CamGlen Radio 107.9 FM. It's your voice, your music, your station. Joining me in the studio now, I'm getting quite excited. This is really my geeky heaven coming up. I have Frank Whiteley in the studio to talk to me all about his comic illustrations. So thank you for joining me today. Do you want to explain how you got started into comic books? I mean, that seems to me like the ideal job. If you're into drawing, that seems like the ideal job.
Hi, Kat. Yeah, it is the ideal job. Since as young as I can remember, I drew all the time because it was my main hobby, and the dream was always to find a job where I was drawing all the time. And it wasn't until, and it could have been any kind of drawing, it could have been CD covers, book illustrations, posters, commissioned artwork, anything at all. But I didn't actually get into doing comic books until I was about 20, 21. I had left art school and I was doing all sorts of different things. I was doing posters for nightclubs, I was doing window dressing, everything. And there was a bunch of guys in Parney Street that were putting a comic together called Electric Soup, and it was a kind of Scottish viz, and they were looking for people who could write and draw their own comic book stories. And as soon as I started doing that, something clicked, and I thought, yeah, I could keep doing this.
Yeah, because of course there was a huge big comic book store on Parney Street at one point.
That's right, AKA.
Yeah. I couldn't remember. I think it's now A1, but yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
right.
It's been there for an awful long time.
Oh yeah, more than 30 years.
When you got started in your drawing, you've worked with some of the best comic book writers. You've written Grant Morrison and Mark Millar. How does those sort of partnerships come about? Do you seek them out, or were you sought out, or are they sort of put together by the comic companies themselves?
It can work in all three of those ways. For me, what happened was, Glasgow is quite a small city, and comics is quite a niche thing. So all the writers and artists kind of knew each other from, there would always be meetups in certain pubs in the town and stuff. And then once you start going to comic book conventions, like down in London even, you meet the other guys from Glasgow when you're down there. So I had met Grant Morrison and Mark Millar before I worked with either of them. And Grant in particular had kind of been keeping an eye on my artwork. He'd seen it in Electric Soup, and then when I started working for the Judge Dredd magazine, he had kept an eye on how I was kind of evolving as the first couple of years went by. And then he requested me, through his editor, for a comic that he was writing at DC Comics in America. And then once I'd accepted, we kind of got together and talked about it before we started, and so that's the way we ended up working together. But we had known each other socially a wee bit before that.
And how does the dynamic work? Because as I was saying to you earlier, I had Badger the Mystical Mutt. It's obviously a story for children, and it's an illustrator with the writer, and they start with the front cover and they work from the front cover. That sort of gives them an idea of the story, and then they work from, obviously the story's written, and then she draws the pictures to illustrate the story. But for yourself, is it very much they've written the story, this is it, go draw the pictures kind of thing?
Generally, when I'm working with a writer, they approach me with a story idea that they've already kind of shaped and say, are you interested in working in this? And then I'll do character designs, just to check that this is the kind of thing the writer's got in mind. But when it comes to actually drawing the comic, I'm working from a script that they've already finished, and that's usually got all the information that I need. I've heard of some examples of the image coming first. I think it's less common. Certainly in comic books, it's more common for the scripts to be written ahead of time, and then if the first choice artist isn't available, it'll be given to somebody else, or if they fall behind their deadlines, somebody else will come in and do some of it. So generally speaking, it's story read from the point of view of keeping the thing going. For me as a child, it was always artist-led, because I would tend to buy comics, not really read them. I would just look at the pictures.
Right, okay. And the other thing I was thinking about is, the story, the writer's obviously written up whatever they've got to do, and then you've got to do the pictures. But I'm thinking, you've got an awful lot more to do, really, than the writer has, because the writer's already sort of, this is the story arc, this is how it's going to go, but you've got to match all the pictures up with how they want that to go, and keep it consistent so that it doesn't change from one frame to the next.
Yeah, it takes much longer.
It does. It seems a bit unfair that way.
Yeah, most writers can write 2 or 3 comic books a month, and most artists, it takes them about 2 months or more to draw one comic book. So,
crikey, yeah, so it's a lot longer.
It's a lot longer. Yeah.
And a lot more, I imagine, effort intensive, labour intensive, all of that sort of thing.
I would say so. I'm sure writers would say the thing about the artist is we're never faced with a blank page and having to come up with an idea. We've got a script to work from, so whereas I suppose the idea of trying to come up with a new story all the time is just a different set of challenges.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose. For somebody who can't draw, though, you say, I would be looking at that going, no, that would terrify me a lot more than coming up with a new idea. Trust me, I could probably manage the new idea, but I'm not sure I could draw all the characters and all the different frames and keep it all consistent. That would just not work for me. So some of the illustrations that you've worked for with have been like Batman. You've worked on Judge Dredd, as you said. You've also worked on the Superman. These are sort of iconic characters that everybody knows about, everybody's read. When you've seen them transferred onto, film, do you see bits that you've drawn that have been picked up by the filmmakers, or do you look at that going, that's never ever been in anything I've ever thought about for these characters?
Both. I mean, obviously it's nice to see stuff that's new that you hadn't thought of, but it's common to see something that when you watch a film, something that you've actually seen in one of the comics before, and occasionally something that I've drawn myself. With the Superman story that I did with Grant Morrison, it was called All-Star Superman, and they actually made that into a feature-length animation. Right. So it was actually very true to the original source. So you've got, you can see that now. Yeah. And that must have been quite cool to see it as an actual feature film. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because that is, imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery, so that must have been pretty awesome to see that. Yeah. What was it like, I mean, at the school gates, Dad's a comic book drawer, an illustrator, for the kids coming out of school. Were they even aware of it, or...? No. Was that? No, I think it's that way when your kids are growing up. I used to always work in the house, and the kids would come in and look at what I was doing, but I don't think they gave it much thought really. And then it wasn't really until they were teenagers where occasionally they would meet somebody that was actually a comic fan. and would know my work, and then they'd kind of realise that there was people out there that were actually looking at the stuff that I'd been sitting drawing. I think it was just something they didn't really give much thought to. Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I would have thought you'd have been one of the coolest dads in the school playgrounds. No. Well, in fairness, I wasn't often at the school playground because I tend to work really long hours, so it was usually my wife that went down to the school gates. With with comic book illustrations and stuff, that you could have more or less sort of a flexi time sort of thing. Yeah, you can make your own hours, but if you really need to work like between 10 and 14 hours a day to pay the mortgage, then you can be as flexible as you like. You can work through the night and sleep half of the morning, but it's still long hours, Yeah, that sounds horrendous, by the way, 10 to 14 hour days. That sounds really very hard. I'm pretty slow, though. There are other artists that work like 8 or 10 hours a day. And when you start with, an idea or a drawing, I was reading something about, I'm always sort of pleased if I haven't had to take out many lines as opposed to what I've got on the page, and I'm thinking, crikey, I would be looking for, I've spent 10 hours in this, I want the finished drawing. Mm-hmm. But is that not how you can look at it? No, sometimes when you're drawing, it just comes really naturally and everything seems to go right. And other times, I'd rub out as many lines as I draw because I keep making mistakes, or I keep drawing things. Like I would try to draw a facial expression, it just won't be quite right, and I would keep rubbing it out and drawing it again. So
to see if you could get it better.
Yeah.
And so you got an honorary doctorate from Glasgow University.
I did, yes.
So what was that like when you were at the ceremony?
Oh well, it was it was really great. Because with the honorary degrees there were only 7 this year,
right.
or like on this particular day, it was commemoration day, and so I was actually allowed to bring like 10 guests. So my mum and my mother-in-law and both my sisters and their husbands, and so I basically had like kind of my family and my wife's family there, and it was a really kind of grand affair. And there was a service in the university chapel first. It's if you've not been inside Glasgow University, it's kind of like Hogwarts. It's huge halls with kind of cloisters and stained glass windows and like wood panelling and all this kind of thing. It really looks amazing.
It's sort of more traditional idea of university, like Oxford and Cambridge, as opposed to...
it's totally Harry Potter. I mean, it really is. It's got that kind of grandness about it.
It's funny you should say that, because I can remember from years ago when I was there for a Freshers' Day or whatever for Glasgow University, I remember thinking the song that kept playing in my head was actually the overture for the Marriage of Figaro, and the idea of the running in robes, running in and out the pillars, going, this would be me. And then I thought, no, actually, because when I was looking at the coursework, I went to Strathclyde because I thought this is much more focused, much more me. And then realised, no, that's not what you do during university at all. You don't become focused in the slightest.
No, you don't.
You spent 4 years going, what? And then a big panic towards the end when you're going, no, I need to actually do some work and get this degree now.
I think that's the reality for most people,
It is. It's quite scary, that. And when you think sort of 20 years later, I'm thinking, no, can't believe it was that long ago. I understand through Google, now it might be totally wrong, because you know how sometimes Google gives up some fantastic bits of information, you're a bit of a celebrity master chef?
Hey, that's a huge exaggeration. I enjoy cooking.
So you're not going to follow Mid-Year's footsteps and go on Celebrity Master Chef?
No, I'm not.
You must be able to make some of the best sort of plate decorations.
Oh yeah, I can make things look nice, but no, I just enjoy cooking. That's it. I'm not especially good at it or anything. I just enjoy it.
I would think that. I think that with your creative bent, that must be. I think you're hugely underselling this. I'll bet you these are absolute works of art that come out on the plate.
I'll invite you up for dinner. You can judge for yourself.
So what was the other thing? Yes, the exhibition, obviously, at the Kelvingrove. It's on until, is it October?
1st of October.
1st of October. So there's plenty of time over the summer holidays to go and see all of the drawings, and it's a selection of the drawings and other comic book memorabilia, really, in at the Kelvingrove. It must be a huge boost to yourself to get like the honorary degree in this exhibition in Glasgow, not quite your hometown, but sort of hometown recognition.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I was born in Rutherglen, and I still stay here, so to be recognised by Glasgow Uni and by Kelvingrove is tremendous, and in the same year.
And to get, obviously the thrill of seeing your name sort of in the front, because you must have seen or gone to Kelvingrove, I'm sure you would have, when you were at the art school, to get ideas or designs for whatever bit of work you were working on.
Like loads of families, like we went there quite often, like when I was like really young, just because like most kids love the suits of armour, the bees, the Egyptian stuff, and then, as you say, when I was an art student, instead of going downstairs to all that stuff, I went upstairs to all the paintings. Similarly with the Burrow collection, with Goma and all the rest of it. But yeah, I went there really often as an art student, sometimes on my own, sometimes with student friends, and then over the years, I go there really often just because, partly for inspiration, partly because it's just a nice place to go. And if I've got any comic writers or artists over from the States or up from down south, I'll take them to Kelvingrove, I'll take them to the Necropolis, I'll take them to Ashton Lane. there's certain things you kind of do to show off your city, and Kelvingrove's always been one of them, you know. And the thing is, you know, like, because comic books, they're not art like the paintings upstairs, and they're not artifacts like the stuffed animals and suits of armour downstairs. So I'd never considered, you know, that I would have an exhibition in there or a single piece hanging in there. So when they approached me about having a comic related exhibition, it was a total surprise.
And as I was saying, you know, hometown recognition, because people do now associate Glasgow with comic books because of things like Mark Millar, of course, with Badass, etc. That has become really sort of cult status almost.
Yeah. Oh, it has, yeah.
And I was saying I can't believe just how many sort of big names have come out of Scotland in terms of the comic book. Because comic books, when I was thinking about comic books, I was obviously thinking, well, you're talking about Batman and Superman, the all-American heroes, really, that have been basically crafted by an awful lot of Scottish artists and writers.
That's right,
over the last few
years. You imagine that it would be American writers and artists mostly that are behind these big American titles, but proportionally, for the size of Scotland, we've done a lot over there.
So what's coming up for you next? What are you next working on?
At the moment, I'm just doing some comic book covers, just to keep some money coming in while I take a break. Was it The Walking Dead? Had you done a cover for The Walking Dead? Yes, that's in the exhibition. But I've just finished a big project with Mark Millar called Jupiter's Legacy, and it should have taken me about 2.5 years, and it took me about 3.5 years. Okay. So he was very patient. But so that's done now, and so at the moment I'm out of deadline, which is a really rare treat for me. So I'm going to try and spin this out for another couple of weeks before I take something else on. Is this a bit of downtime now? This is actually a very rare bit of downtime for me. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for coming in and doing that. Thank you. My thanks, as I said before, Frank Whiteley was in talking to me all about the comic book illustrations, the exhibition that's on at Kelvingrove Art Gallery, and of course his recent honorary doctorate.
CamGlen Radio, 107.9 FM.
Your voice, your music, your station.